So anybody that's been in a 12-step program, you will want to watch this video because, well, it has way more significance than I could have ever thought. But let's get into it. So this is the four apostles, the four gospels. And the early church fathers, which when it says early church fathers, it means the Catholic Orthodox Church, a bunch of people that they didn't know God. You don't need to be a scholar to know God. In fact, that will get you into trouble, okay? Because in order to know God, it's truly one gospel, most especially. But the early church fathers, for whatever reason, because they were tying it to Ezekiel in the Old Testament, and Ezekiel talked about these four animals that are also in Revelation. Well, they tied each animal to one of the four gospels. You know what? They complicate things. Jesus warned of these people that complicate his word. Yeah, they all did. So here's Matthew. Matthew represented just a man because he focused on Jesus's human family tree and birth. The next one is Mark. He's with the lion. He focused because of his gospel focusing on Jesus as the royal line of Judah, and his gospel starts with a roaring in the desert. The next apostle to him is Luke. Luke is looked at as the ox. Again, this was the early church fathers. Because his gospel focuses on sacrifices, and oxes were often sacrificed in the temple. And then the last one there, well, that's John. Apostle John represents the eagle. Yeah. But this was the early church fathers, okay? But what's interesting looking into this is that, the Catholic Church's claim to fame is that, nope, we were given the keys to Peter's church because of Jesus saying it is on you, Peter, and they literally then went on to build over Peter's bones. Great. So anyway, proving Jesus's prophecy, literally. The thing is that it's been debated that really the true church was handed off to John. And that's what's always kind of, at least the last few years has stood out to me. It's like, wait a minute. No, they couldn't kill John. John was the living martyr. So what church was handed off to Peter? Well, the kind of faith that he had. Because when Jesus told him, it's on you, Peter, I'm going to build my church. Well, after that, when Jesus was arrested, Peter went on to deny him 3 times. I'm not saying that Jesus didn't love the other apostles, but there's a reason he most especially loved John. Again, it's very simple. You don't need the church to help you here. He loved Apostle John and Mary Magdalene because everybody debates about, well, no, Mary Magdalene was the head of the apostles. Yeah, I think there's some truth in that because she would have understood it better because of, again, being a woman. Yeah, the men just... Anyway, John, however, John's gospel is very different than the other 3 because his is all about the heart. All about that. So many say that, well, yeah, Jesus passed on a church structure to Peter, but the true church he gave to John. That makes more sense because they couldn't kill John. He's really the only witness out of the 12, but him and Mary Magdalene stayed at the cross, as I always say. Do you not think that was huge to God? That meant there was no more evidence he needed to believe. He fully believed. The other 11 apostles, it was only once they were hiding and running away. They did not stay at the cross because they were afraid they would be arrested. But Mary Magdalene, and most especially Apostle John, did stay. He was out of the 12, he was the only true witness, which is why God would not let anyone kill him and let him die of old age, and he was the last one to die, and he was the youngest apostle. Interesting that he was picked as the eagle, even though I trust nothing the Catholic Church comes up with. They just complicate everything. But But it's interesting that it was the eagle, because the eagle, it represented that he was truly the one soaring to heaven because his gospel was so different. So this is like a picture of like a structure back in Rome, like a sanctuary. And I'm using this only for visualization. That really Peter, yes, Peter was given, you know how the Catholic Church uses the double keys over each other? Yeah, Peter was given the keys, if that's what they want to say, to the church building. That's it. What happened after you create the church structure, which Jesus never wanted because the apostles showed they were never building anything. You have to have a hierarchy then, and then you have gatekeepers, and the Catholic Church to this day has played little gatekeepers to everything. So again, I've said God will deal with them last. But if you wanted to use the church structure as a way to look at it, even though the apostles knew it wasn't about a structure, but the way to look at it is this would be like the church. It's the outer sanctuary, where John was about the inner sanctuary. But I'm just trying to use this as an example. None of the true apostles, all of them knew it had nothing to do with the building, which is why before they died, they were going home to home. Okay, and then of course Rome had to get themselves involved in everything and then take over, and it's been a disaster. I mean, well, I don't want to say it's been a disaster. This is why I went back and forth. I'm like, but God, it could be both ways. Like, it's okay for the church, and no, but Jesus, I've always said that it didn't matter what Rome did, because Jesus knew the church structure was going to be a problem. He knew the governments were going to be a problem, regardless of where, okay? He knew, because what is the key thing I say all the time? Surrender. You have to surrender. The churches aren't going to help you do that. They're going to help you all conform, because they don't know it either. But God made sure that there was some people that truly understood it. Because his Holy Spirit, they couldn't stop that from spreading. They maybe could have, the church structure in Rome and Constantine and all the rest that think that they know God, think that they were controlling something, but no, but God, he knew what he was doing, of course, always. And so while the churches have been all about, being gatekeepers, and because I mean, most Christians I see, and it's this surface thing. It's like just knowing God on a surface level, and it's about a book, and it's what is it? I don't even know what it is. But John, he was actually the carrier of the true church, because the true church was the holy fire of God within you. That carried on. No matter what all the Protestant, Baptist, whatever, they've all just, just became, I don't know, mind numb or something. And it's all just about a book. Not really about the true authority, which is the fire of God in here. But that carried the true church, John. And many people say this because John's gospel is totally different than the others. It would be. He understood what it really was. And what he taught the most was surrender. So, the reason I mentioned AA at the beginning is, well, God did continue his church, but he didn't call it a church. He didn't even call it a religion or a denomination. But he continued the same work he was doing when Jesus was here, spreading the Holy Spirit. And as I said in AA, I've seen more of the Holy Spirit alive than I've ever seen in a church. Because God made sure that, yes, in this holy land, the churches will run and think that they all know me. But they didn't, because they made their buildings. But I will still make this nation filled with the Holy Spirit. And he did it with AA. Go figure.